This is our last podcast. Welcome to your last podcast, the last podcast in the game, but the first you should listen to. I'm your host, Colton Simpson. And with me this week, all the way down at the other end of the table, is Mr. Listen himself, Josh Vey.
What are you at?
And to my left, your right, it's our resident audiophile, William M. Clark.
This is it?
And last but certainly not least, always in my corner, it's the amazing Grace Tatigian.
Hello, hello.
So what is your last podcast? We're a conversational podcast where every week each of us brings a topic of conversation to argue amongst ourselves and talk it out for your amusement. And usually this is where I'd go into some, subscribe to the channel, help us out on Patreon, but this is our last podcast. So, stay tuned for the rest of the episode. We'll get into it a little bit more at the end of the episode as to why we're ending things, but this is it. Episode 22, 88 topics. This is our last podcast. So off of that, there's no real easy pivot, and I guess I'll keep things as a downer, but I'm starting things off this week, and my topic is, how do we get rid of a dead body? Which, it's
not ill-timed at all.
No. Basically, I just want to ask the table, how do we get rid of a dead body? It's not exactly that complicated. You're found with a dead body. How do you get rid of it? Josh, you told me off camera that you had a really good answer for this. So our last episode, I'm going to throw it to you. Start her off solid.
Okay, so the objective is to avoid getting caught, I'm assuming, obviously, is the reason. So it's disposal.
Yes, get rid of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
So this is not actually my answer, so I have to give a shout out to BJ Saunders with the commissionaires back in Goose Bay,
All right.
who told me this amazing way to dispose of someone you absolutely hated. If it ever came down to, say you got into a bar fight or whatever and accidentally killed them. So he said, the ultimate way, he said, because, obviously if you just go buried in the woods, there's always a chance that through an excavation or through a forestry survey or whatever that they're going to find it. If you throw it out in the ocean, there's always a chance that, the dragger is going to pull it up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Always a chance. So why take a chance? What you need to do is you need to hide it somewhere close to home that can provide a continual means of satisfaction. So
Satisfaction?
So BJ's answer was to take the body to your cabin, dig a pit for your outhouse, and put the body in the shit pit, and that's where you would leave it. So you could continually shit on this person you hated for years, and no one would ever decide to check it out and investigate. Because nobody wants to go poking around a shithole in the outhouse. So I thought that was a brilliant answer. It would never be found. It would be gone forever, beyond all reasonable trace. So, yeah, Beach, there you go. You got your answer.
That would be one smelly outhouse.
Oh, yeah.
But it does disguise the smell, which is something you got to kind of factor in.
What was funny was how much satisfaction he derived out of the idea of just shitting on someone you hated.
Yeah, when you said satisfaction, I got a little nervous.
Well, no, you were thinking Norman Bates probably, but we're not going there. But yeah, no, that's Beach's answer. So I figured there's nothing I'm going to come up with that's going to be better than that. So it's just as well to copy and paste and whack her in.
All right, Grace, I assume probably on the other side of the tracks. How would you get rid of a dead body?
I was trying to think of this, and in all honesty, I would call the cops and fess up.
I knew you were going to say that, but you got to get rid of it.
Let's be serious. Okay, well, if I actually had to get rid of it, I'd probably call you, Colton.
Okay.
Of everybody I know, you're probably the most likely person I would call, to be completely honest.
Sweet. All right.
And then what would we do with it? You always talk. Well, I won't steal what I know you're going to say. Because,
maybe not, actually. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because you always talked about the cesspool in Goose Bay.
Oh, that wasn't what I was thinking of. Go for it. Yeah, that's a good answer.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, no, I know it would be like a bit of a trek to get it up to Goose Bay, but you always talked about this cesspool. So I was like, well, that's a place that you always talked about putting a dead body. But
it's drained now, though. So
is it drained?
It's drained now.
Oh no! So now you can't kill anyone.
No, I guess it's off the table now.
But so I was thinking of that, but I was like, oh, there's no way to do it. So I was just thinking, hiding it in plain sight kind of thing, where people won't look for it. I was thinking of my storm cellar doors going down into my basement. Yeah. It's not, so my basement, for anybody who hasn't been to my house, is not actually attached to upstairs. You have to go outside to get into my basement, and it's unfinished.
The crawl space, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of a crawl space, except I don't have to crawl because I'm short enough. It's like 5'5" ceiling. So anybody who is taller than me can't stand up, but I can stand up just fine. But in between there and outside, I have a mini door that's like half the size of a regular door. And then there's like these storm cellar doors, and it's all earth there. So I'm thinking dig all that up and stick it down under there. Because who is going to bury a body in their own house? What kind of idiot does that? So
yeah, I think John Wayne Gacy, I think one of the most notorious serial killers of all time, did that. But yeah, probably not the best place to do it, but that's not too bad of an idea. How would you get rid of a dead body?
So my first thoughts were like, is it like a really bloody body? We have to worry about cleanup. Mm-hmm. Were they like poisoned to death, or were they like beat to death with a hammer? But like, I'm gonna take the easy way out and say they were poisoned because
less
mess. My first thought was, wrap them up in a few garbage bags, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Single-use bags.
And bury them out to sea. But when Grace mentioned burying it in her house, I was thinking, find one of those construction sites up around here.
Yeah.
Where like they still have like a bit of gravel pit. Just dig under there. Throw the body under there, refinish the gravel, and then when they pour the concrete, no one's going to find that shit.
The sin with that is you're setting up an unsuspecting family to be haunted. Whereas in Beej's scenario, it's just, if anyone's going to get haunted, it's going to be you. But you don't care at this point because you're already getting satisfaction out of it.
That makes me think of, there's a famous mafia family in Montreal, and they own a concrete company. And there was this famous quote that came out a few years ago. I don't know who they were blackmailing somebody, but the line got out was, our sidewalks are long and deep and you wouldn't want to find yourself in one. So it makes me think of that.
Shit, that's pretty badass.
Make sure you edit that out of the show so I don't end up fucking buried.
Yeah, really though.
But
that's pretty rough.
Yeah.
All right, so when I was looking into it, I don't actually have the best answer in terms of where to hide them, but I was looking into like all the different ways of like speed at which you'd have to get rid of the body. So 3 hours after death is when rigor mortis sets in, and you're gonna have a hell of a time maneuvering that body to get into like a trunk or get it into the back of a truck or pull it out of somewhere by yourself. So I think you either got 3 hours to get rid of it or 3 days. And then I think you got like the weekend at Bernie's scenario where you're kind of living with a corpse for a few days until the rigor mortis is done and the body starts to decay. So I'd like to say I'd be able to try and figure out how to get rid of it in 3 hours, but you'd probably have a bit of a shock. You'd probably have a bit of a, God, am I going to have to cut this thing up? Like, what am I going to do to get rid of it?
Sopranos always cut them up.
Always cut them up?
Always.
And I feel like that is probably the most economical way to get rid of it too, like cut it up and maybe burn it. But it's just gross. It's a lot of work to actually cut up the body and get rid of it. We've had a lot of fires up on like Seaside and stuff back in the day, Maybe if we could have
the pallets,
we could have took one up there, put it in with the pallets, maybe. But I think probably the best way to hide a body around here, if we're kind of omitting the myth of bottomless pond, which apparently loads of bodies have went in there. I mean, that'd be hard for me to get out in the little.
You're talking about the gallows up there.
Yeah, up there near Signal Hill. Yeah, kind of tossing a body in there. It'd be pretty rough. I think it's just the bog method. And I think if you kind of cut up the body, went for a walk out in the bog, you hit a foot here and an elbow over here and the head over here, I think the bog would speed up the process of actually like getting rid of the body to the point of by the time dogs or anything find it, it would be like, oh, I found a femur. It wouldn't be like the whole body is there.
No, that's right.
Now, I don't know if I'd actually be able to cut up a body and get rid of it. But in terms of actually the idea of getting rid of it, you only have a couple of hours to get to it. In terms of enlisting help, I was really conflicted because I feel like Grace would be someone who would keep the secret, but it would eat her alive.
That's the thing.
And it would build up, and I think she'd wind up ratting me out at the end of it. Where Josh, I feel like you'd be a good one in terms of you have the truck that we can enlist the help in. Bring the truck along, go for a drive across the island, visit a couple bogs. But I think you'd wind up like having a few drinks one time and just like spiraling into a depression and like telling the tale. So I think the only way for me to keep it a true secret was if I did it myself. But that you're doubling all the work. So I'm certainly not telling him. He'd go crazy and just blurt it out at the gas station or something while he's working. So I can't do that. But I think just keeping it to yourself the work. I don't know how I do it here. I guess Ham would find a half a torso in his home.
There's two types of murders. There's ones you get away with and ones that leave witnesses, right? So
yeah, it's true.
Can't have anyone witness it.
Yeah.
You're always taking a chance.
Yeah, the eating me alive thing is why, to me, the only answer is I'd have to turn myself in. Like, there is no way I could live with myself. I probably couldn't live with myself even if I did turn myself in.
You say that, and then your answer was to bury them underneath your house.
Well, I mean, if you're not giving me a choice, if you're telling there is nowhere for me to turn myself into.
I was hoping Ham's answer was going to be a little bit more out there because I was wondering how he was going to bring corpse on the bus without people noticing. I was just really picturing like the Weekend at Bernie's scenario.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty fun. But yeah, Ham, who would you enlist to help hide a body?
I think I'd do it myself is the thing. And I wouldn't want to get anyone involved in it. Oh, there is a good course of action. I could call up all of the not so sane people that come through my gas station.
Oh yeah,
to come carry the body out and then pin it on.
Yeah, I was gonna say frame them. That's a great idea.
And they're already in the water for it, so it wouldn't change their situation.
Mm-hmm. You just might wind up in there with them out of guilt.
Yeah, that's true.
Just eliminate any chance for a recovery for them. The ones in the water for just wipe that out.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is just a dumb, silly topic. I guess it kind of exhausts it. Who are we throwing it to next?
I think I'm next.
You're next? All right.
Okay, so my topic for the week was, which of the 7 deadly sins is the worst? And so if you're like me and can never remember all 7, they are in no particular order: lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. And so I'm wondering which one you folks think is the worst and what your rationale is behind it.
For me, it would have to be wrath, 100%.
Yeah? Same.
And simply because I do live by the motto that you should never say anything in anger, because once you say it, you cannot take it back. So, with regard to choosing your words carefully sometimes, especially if you're particularly irritated, you might want to sort of hold it in and maybe vent it in a more appropriate fashion later on, because once you put it out there, if you explode, you could permanently damage something that you might not want to damage. So for me, wrath is always a big one. Plus, half the shit that goes wrong in the Bible anyways is God's wrath. The whole Sodom and Gomorrah story, I mean, that is the wrath of God.
Weirdly enough, 7 deadly sins, though? Not in the Bible.
No.
It's not?
It's
No,
not.
I didn't know that.
No.
Where does it come from then?
Didn't read that far, but not in the Bible.
All right.
It's not. No, I believe 7 deadly sins.
Is it Dante came up with that?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah,
Is
it's like
it?
an interpretation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Like
I mean, there's plenty of instances of wrath.
Oh, yeah.
In the Bible.
I mean, all
Right,
these
right.
sins are in the Bible. I'm just saying I don't think there's a particular passage that said these are the 7
No.
deadly sins. There are.
Dante was the one who made the list. you're
Yeah,
saying?
it's more of like the 10 Commandments.
And not
right?
even in the Old Testament at all?
Not from what
No?
now, I didn't dig into it super
I know it's
deep.
not I know it's not in the new one, but I was just assuming that it might have been in the old one, maybe.
I also made the assumption it was in the old one. I didn't look that deeply into it.
Well,
I Googled the list of them, but that's pretty much it.
I'll put the answer on screen. But when I looked at it last night, I'm pretty sure it said that it's not from biblical
I wouldn't be
nature.
surprised, though.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's just an interpretation.
Ham, you agreed with wrath. What's your rationale there?
Sort of the same thing as Josh. I think that wrath is probably the most destructive of all of them. Like, you get immediate results from wrath, because if you have someone that has uncontrolled anger, or they're not good at holding in their aggressive tendencies, they tend to push people away. They tend to make everyone feel uncomfortable or worse. And I just don't think that any of the other ones quite live up to the destructiveness that wrath kind of has. Because greed at least has a function, lust has a function. Lust doesn't necessarily lead to bad things always, but it could.
Some do. I just found that some led to wrath, like envy easily
does.
leads to wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right?
that's my choice. I chose envy. It was just the gut reaction. Like when I read the 7, I was like, I think it's envy, because I look at greed can be a motivator. Even though it's a negative motivator, it can motivate you to be more and more rich. Lust, you can, want more and more of sexual nature or power or whatever. Wrath, there's a goal in mind. Where when I was looking at envy, don't get me wrong, being envious of somebody is a motivator as well. But if you're truly envious and you're not actually making any advances to try and gain whatever that person has, if you're just truly envious and covetous all the time, I just looked at it as more as it's almost like sloth in nature, where you won't wind up doing anything because you're worried more so about the other people rather than yourself. Whereas the other ones I found were just a little bit more purely what you want and purely your nature. I know the argument can be made for envy as well. But yeah, where like pride, it's like, okay, I'm very pride and I'm an egotistical person. But envy is truly just being like, I want what they have. So at least, yeah, I don't know. I went with envy.
Yeah, and I agree. That was the other one I struggled a lot with, was which one am I going to pick? Is it going to be envy? Because that is in no way healthy to just be envious of everyone else who has something that you don't.
Yeah.
It eventually leads to resentment. The main difference for me was that's an internal reaction and internal emotion, whereas wrath is actually now me acting on my emotions. So that was the big reason why I chose wrath over envy.
And I do agree with you that, being envious probably does lead to wrath. But when I was just taking them by themselves without actually getting into the other ones, I was like, just being purely envious is almost, to me, like if you're not acting on it, if you're just always wanting what other people have or wanting, to be like them, I just was like, it's almost like sloth in a way, which sloth I think is a pretty boring answer. But
that's my answer.
Yeah,
my
I kind of
answer
figured.
is sloth. So it's funny because you're talking, Josh, about how, like wrath is out there affecting other people. But I was looking at it the other way of basically all of these, if you keep them to yourself, you know what I mean? If you're angry in your own home or something like that, if you, kick the cupboard and, nobody else is around to see it or be impacted by it, all of these have the potential to not impact other people if you, practice some self-restraint in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But your sloth will always impact other people, is the way I look at it. If you don't do your dishes, then somebody else is inconvenienced. If
you live with people.
If you live with people, I mean, if you're a hermit out in the woods and you never ever do anything, then yes, you're. But in like the larger context of society and interacting with other people, if you don't do your work at work, it will impact other people until you are the one to get fired. But first, it will impact other people.
There is an argument to be made there, because if you don't even do anything and you live by yourself and you end up on social assistance, you are impacting the greater good. I can get behind that, sure.
And you can make the argument for any of those 7 things.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I was Googling it, it was pretty much unanimously, everyone says the worst is pride.
Really?
Yep. And they say if you look at like throughout history, throughout like all of like the evil dictators and all these evil people, the one commonality between them all is pride. They say pride is the one that basically it makes the person be like totalitarian, makes them be like a completely egotistical person, and basically makes them delve into all the other sins. It was just, personally, I didn't really think pride was the worst one out of them.
Yeah, because I mean, I think there's also, benefits to pride. Obviously, like being proud of your work, being proud of the people you love, being, proud of your country or something along those lines. There's a lot of positivity in pride.
There is, and then the argument is like, very being prideful of your country has caused a lot of harm for history, right?
The more you explain it, the more I start to agree with it in terms of it is very secular. As soon as you start going down that road and you start isolating yourself, this is what I'm proud of. And obviously, if I'm proud of something, it's different than something that you're not. So there you go. The identity politics is already starting to form.
Yeah, and it winds up being like, if you lust for something and somebody doesn't give it to them, then wrath is shown very quickly, or if you're lusting for things because of your power and your pride, you can usually get it, right? To the harm of others. It's, I didn't do too much reading into it, but because I was like, no, I think it's envy. But
well, yeah, no, yeah. Like the question was, which one is
exactly.
For you? So if you definitely find that envy is worse, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah, and I do think like envy, like I said, it could be used as a motivator. It's just, I think if you're just truly envious and you're just always complaining all the time about other people and never actually looking at yourself, I just kind of think that winds up being really negative.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not constructive in any way.
No.
And, that's the thing with most of these is they're not constructive. They don't help you. They don't help anybody else. There is no upside to many of these.
That's why I think your argument for sloth is probably, it's a very similar argument to my own, where you're not doing anything. Just by the very nature of sloth, you don't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There we go. Anybody else want to chime in?
Nope.
No? All right.
I think that sets it up. Yeah.
All right. Well then, Ham, I think your topic is next.
So I wanted to go into a piece of music, or maybe like an album or song that maybe like stirs something up in you. Maybe it makes you feel nostalgic, or it takes you to a certain place in your life or time, and makes you like look back on things or like self-reflect. And I have a few of those albums because I'm like my vice is music when I'm like feeling down or bummed out. But I guess I'll kick it off because I have an answer right away. There's this one hardcore record that I found when I was like just coming out of high school. It's by a band called Counterparts. They're from Hamilton, Ontario. And that record, when I heard it, and I was like, so like I didn't know what the hell I was doing because I like just got out and I was like, I kind of want to go do music and see where that takes me, or should I go to school? And I'm still kind of there. I'm still like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but like that record, I can kick that back and sort of like look through it. And like the way that it's presented is just really, really raw because like everything is just single tracked and all the songs are edited kind of bad. Like you can hear click tracks in some of the...
Oh, I know. I've heard it.
You can hear click tracks in some of the drum tracks, and most of it is like really just like rushed, and you can tell like they were like trying to get it out and like they like weren't quite there when they were playing it, but they were like really trying. And like the album itself just sounds anxious and young and like youth, I think. That's how
well, it's very raw. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Essentially, right? It's just they wanted to get something out there and they pushed through to get it done.
But the lyrics on that album were like straight up just like, I'm lost. I hate everything. I don't want to feel like this. And then that carries throughout the whole album. And it's just like his thoughts throughout the whole thing.
And at the time, you could really relate to them, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And like at that time, it's like, that's what I needed. Like, I needed a record like that was like self-reflective and a big mess. I think that album like sums up my like late teenage years to mid 20s, I think.
Yeah, and from what you're saying, like where music is your passion, I feel about music the way Josh said a few episodes he feels about movies. They're just movies. He doesn't care about it. To me, music is a distraction. It's something I put on in the background. And that's why a lot of my music, I think I've mentioned it on the show before, it's obnoxious.
Yeah.
It's loud. Most people hate it. It's irritating. At times it was dubstep. Now it's metalcore where it's a mixture of screaming with soft vocals. Like my music is obnoxious and it's kind of the drowned out everything. When I think about an album, this isn't my pick, but I think about like back in 2010 or 2009, every single day when we drive to school, I'd have Alisana's The Emptiness on. And it's an album that it tells a story from the beginning to the end. There's whiny tracks. They tell this story of Annabelle, this girl that died and now she's back as a ghost and they can't get over her. All my friends that drove around with me at that time, they knew all the lyrics to The Emptiness. We knew all the songs. We could all sing along to it. But my choice, I'm going to go with something from a couple of years ago, is Attack Attack's The Motivation, the song off of that third album of Attack Attack, that band that's known for the crabcore dancing.
Oh my gosh, I was like, why does that sound familiar?
Where they get down and they kind of scuttle back and forth and headbang. It's like the weirdest shit ever. But they have a song that they wrote in their last album before they went out, and it's just this song where lyrically it's kind of framed about, I think, a guy at war, and he's coming back, he wants to get home, he wants to get out of this headspace. And of course all of these lyrics, if you search it up, you're gonna have a hard time even picking it out because it's all screams for the most part. But when he gets to the chorus in the song, it's hopeful and motivational of, even though I'm experiencing all this war and all this terrible things across the seas, at least I have something to look forward to. And of course, as the song progresses, it applies wars to different things, wars inside of yourself, depression, anxiety, not getting along with people. And as the song progresses, the chorus starts to get additional lines and actually extend a little bit longer. So it's like, hey, the positive message of the chorus is kind of outweighing all those angry vocals. And it ends, that it is still angry, but he's even decided how to actually come to peace with that anger and kind of use it to get over things. So it winds up being a very positive song at the end. It's not something I actually go out of my way to listen to. It just seems to pop up every now and then, kind of when I need to hear it. So The Motivation by Attack Attack, which if anybody else listens to it, it does not sound like a beautiful song, but whenever it found me at 2011 or 2012, whenever it came out, I appreciated it. So
there you go. Matchbox 20's 3 a.m. A lot of people typically think of me as a very happy and optimistic person. That takes a lot of work. I would not call myself a happy person. I would not call myself an optimistic person. But you know what? I can sit and I can wallow, or I can make the effort and I can try to be happy and I can try to focus on the positive. And so that's what I try to do every day. But there are certain days where it's harder than others, as everybody feels. Some days you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Some days it's hard to motivate yourself. And that song just, I feel, is the exact kind of sadness I feel every day. And so listening to it, and it's a story about basically a girl who is sad, who is going out of her way to try and make other people happy. And that's what I spend most of my life doing. And so I put in the effort to be happy and to be nice to other people. There's a lot of other songs on that album. Lyrically, probably Long Day on that same album, probably more lyrically speaks to me, but it's angrier, and I don't really have a lot of anger inside of me. That's an emotion that I'm pretty good at handling and working out logically, whereas sadness is one that I find very difficult to logic my way out of. Mm-hmm. And so listening to 3 a.m. by Matchbox 20, it's a weird kind of, it's a cross between self-indulgence and reassuring. And I think it's because I look at Rob Thomas, who's the lead singer of Matchbox 20. He grew up in a horribly broken home. He was, addicted to drugs. He was in and out of, juvenile detention facilities. He was homeless. And I go, look, if somebody from that situation can write something that speaks to me, who grew up in privilege and all this kind of stuff, and if he can do what he did, it's not so bad. I'm going to be okay. No matter how down I am on a particular day. And it's enough to just push me through and remind me, okay, things aren't so bad. I got this. But it's that the melancholy in that song is what I feel weighs on me every single day. Yeah. What about you, Josh?
I think that's a good answer.
Yeah, follow that up, Josh.
All right. Well, for me, I had a hard time with your question just because I was sort of struggling to think of something that I didn't talk about when we were talking about the streaming services episode, and then when we talked about your favorite score. Mm-hmm. So if I had to nail it down to something that automatically, if I were to hear it come on today, that gives me an emotional reaction right away and puts me back to a time and place long ago, it would definitely be Cascada's Bad Boy.
I knew you were going to say that.
That song by Cascada. I have two answers, don't worry. This one is a little bit more serious. That song, which is such a burnt song, that just makes me think about off-roading in Goose Bay, flying down trails in the woods, climbing over trees and stuff like that, pulling trees out of the ground with my father's truck, stuff like that. Drifting around in the drop zone in a big old F-250 truck. That's the kind of stuff I think about. When I hear that song, it just puts me right back to like summer 2009. It's unreal.
Yeah, I think about like pumping the brakes to the beat of the song and everyone jerking back and forth to the beat of Cascada. Yeah.
But aside, sticking with the theme of off-roading and being mobile, a song that I really like that makes me sad, but also is very nostalgic for me is Drive by Alan Jackson. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that song because country music isn't probably your forte, but most people out there would know the song Drive if they heard it. And that song is just one that makes me think of like my dad being down on Dump Road in the truck or in the little Volkswagen golf car trying to learn how to drive standard. And that's basically what the song describes. It just describes the relationship between the boy and his dad learning how to drive everything from a motorboat to an old truck, beat up truck. And it fits perfectly because even in the song it says, they were hauling trash down some old road. And that's where I learned how to drive, was down on the old Dump Road in Goose Bay, right? Mm-hmm. Dodging the bears and dancing around the refrigerators on the trail.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much where my dad showed me how to drive. So whenever I hear that song, it puts me all them years ago back to like when I was 15, which most of us learned how to drive before we were 16 back in Goose Bay. Yeah. Learning how to drive everything from skidoos when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old to boats and quads and motorcycles. My dad showed me how to do all that stuff. So it puts, well, actually my mom taught me how to ride motorcycles, so that's kind of a little bit different. But, it's, when I hear that song, it just puts me back into that frame of mind and makes me long for simpler times, I guess.
Yeah, and if I was going for like a nostalgia pick for me, like Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, Face Down.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear that song, I picture being in James Conce's shed up in Park, just playing Pokemon Blue on a GameCube emulator. It brings me right back. Or Tears Don't Fall, because James was the big emo kid out of all of our friends. Like, I remember he was one of those people that he would listen to the song over and over and over again. He'd listen to like Tears Don't Fall like 100 times in one day. So I remember just sitting in his room, Tears Don't Fall on loop as we're playing, like, let's say Gears of War or something. So there was more nostalgic picks for sure. What about you, Ham? Is there any like nostalgic picks for you? Or
one that brings a smile to my face is like that like dumb First Job for a Cowboy album.
Oh God, the pig squeal one.
Oh my God, like I remember just like when that came on, like the album is hilariously like good for what it is, but like it's a laugh. Like,
well, it's deathcore music. Most of it's just guttural. You know,
there's like so many weird noises, and like the songs are all fucked up. And like I remember like going on YouTube and like watching all their like live shows, and then they'd be like a complete mess. Be like, "Hey, we're Job for a Cowboy." I'm like,
I was expecting you to say something by Lonely Island or something. Maybe that's what I was sort of thinking.
That stuff's a laugh too. But like nostalgic picks, I don't know. Like a lot of '80s music is nostalgic to me, just because like my parents are from that era, like late '80s, early '90s music.
Mm-hmm.
And like anytime I hear like hair rock, I think of my dad being like young and having jerry curls and smoking darts outside my house, like fixing something. Like that's what like hair rock reminds me of, like to a T. And like my dad listens to a lot of country music too. But like,
point. I can see like anyone in my family back in Goose Bay fixing a skidoo with like Van Halen's Panama on in the background, something like that. I can see that.
Yeah.
There's just like in general, just like the '80s and '90s remind me of my parents a lot.
My '80s and '90s was just all Christian jams.
Yeah.
Virtuoso.
Yeah, Virtuoso is a jam, but I don't have too much nostalgia from like that age, I don't think. Yeah. For you, I'd assume it'd be like Disney music. Is that somewhat nostalgic? Like any of those for you, or?
Yeah, I mean, probably my most listened to song of all time is I Won't Say I'm in Love from the Hercules soundtrack.
That's a good one.
That was one of the few Disney albums that we had like an actual CD of and therefore listened to a lot. And
Tarzan, Phil Collins, come on.
No, my mom was never a Phil Collins or a Genesis fan, so like we didn't have that. I don't even know why. I feel like I must have gotten it for a birthday present or something. It's very unusual that we had this CD, but no, I loved that song. And so that was one I listened to in my room on repeat a lot as a little kid. And it was also when we would go skiing as kids, I was allowed to choose the music on the way there. And it was always Hercules. And Jack was always allowed to choose the music on the way back. And it was always the Beatles' #1 album. Mm-hmm. So that's probably my most listened to song of all time. But yeah, like Disney music is definitely nostalgic. Spent a lot of, I listened to like all the popular things in elementary school, right?
Okay.
I listened to Michelle Branch. I listened to Vanessa Carlton. I listened to Britney Spears, all these things, right? Like the cute poppy girl songs on the radio. But, I grew out of that pretty quick, no longer interested in what was on the radio. So yeah, no, it was an easy question for me to answer. There's, a few other nostalgic albums. Savage Garden's Affirmation, like super sappy, like when you're a sad high school student. That is a classic album to listen to. But yeah,
I didn't have an album because back in the day I was a burnt CD kid. I'd
get on that LimeWire.
Get on LimeWire.
You've never picked the top 3. You always got to go below the top 3.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then it was just these albums basically made of mostly Linkin Park songs, And at the time, I made sure I'd get the non-explicit versions, so my mom would let me listen to them because I didn't want, them to curse in the songs and her make me turn it off. So yeah,
I was kind of expecting you to pick Linkin Park.
Yeah, and I definitely look back to like Numb and In the End at the time. Like I loved those songs. And
3 Days Grace, The Animal. Yeah,
that was a good one too. Yeah. But I just look back to those days and I find them really hard to listen to now just because of Chester Bennington. So Linkin Park would be, a soft spot in my heart. I don't change the Spotify if In the End comes on. I'll leave that one on. But there are a lot of their other songs I just don't listen to anymore. It's just they don't really strike a chord with me.
I think that sums it up for everyone.
That's it, isn't it?
I could go on with like a few more things, but like I think I'm dragging it on now.
Okay. So I'll take over here now. So my question, obviously, seeing how it's our last episode, is it's a year from now. So it's midsummer 2020. You're looking back, you're sitting down, you're having a cup of coffee, and you're thinking about this time last year, and you think about the show. What is it you are going to remember and or what's going to stand out in your head? That's just a general question I want to sort of pose to the table. I think we'll all have very different answers.
For me, one of the big ones is dropping the coffee on my computer and everything and just making a big mess of the table.
Mm-hmm.
That is nightmarish. That whole scenario was just nightmarish. That or seeing Colton in his room editing for hours at first, especially, and he's gotten a lot faster at it, but when he first started, holy shit, that was some rough stuff.
Oh yeah, like I said, the first episode took me 38 hours straight. It doesn't take me 38 hours anymore, but yeah.
And some of it's the stressful things, and some of it's just Josh coming over with his tea, stumbling through the door and being like, "What's up, girls?"
Every week, yeah.
And every week it'd be like, "Oh Jesus," and come through the door with some story
that I couldn't say for the show because it was just too good, right?
Yeah, it was too good,
too rotten in nature to tell on the air.
Yeah, probably that.
I'm probably gonna look back and go that was good timing, because I don't know if there has been, other than when we were in, I want to say in university, but honestly, even then, I don't think I would have had time with being an RA and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
How many times in my life have I been able to have a flexible enough job and or other life circumstances that I could have done something like this? And what with, school coming in the fall and everything like that, I think I'll think back and go, that was good timing for something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, I don't know what the future holds, but what with going back to school and working and traveling and everything that I've got on my plate right now, it's going to be very, very busy coming up. So the timing worked out well for me.
I guess I'll go and drag it all down. Yeah, I mean, on the show, I've mentioned a couple of times about being a pessimist or being a realist or whatever. To me,
pessimist.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I am more of a pessimist. To me, I'll look back on it. Hopefully, it's a way that I learned how to edit and learn how to do a little bit of audio and stuff. But ultimately, in terms of the show itself, I will look at it as a failure. And it's hard for me not to look at it as a failure. It's just because there were certain things that were planned and certain things I wanted to do that will never happen. Just stuff like wanting to get a guest on will never do. Or I thought about whenever Josh misses an episode, I'll have a funny gag, just with, the 3 items to summon him, to throw that in there.
The Woods coat.
Yeah, or even certain topics when I was going over it here, the last week, I was like, oh, shit, that probably would have been a good topic if it wasn't the last episode, So there are certain aspects that I will definitely look at it back as a failure. And, hopefully when we get further out, there will be more positive aspects. But for me, for a lot of the time, as someone who's editing the show, I'm basically seeing the flaws all the time. No matter what, if I'm stumbling over my word, I'm going to cut it out, and hopefully, it fixes it a little bit. If there's an awkward pause, I'll cut it out. Just by the very nature of editing, I am focusing on the flaws more than anything else, right? I'm trying to look for all those moments when, I breathe in the mic a little bit too much, or we talk for a minute and it doesn't impact the conversation and we already have a long episode. So I think just by the very nature of me expecting things to go longer, and also all these different ideas that we never got to try, it winds up being a little bit, to me, as a failure. Now, in terms of the quality of the show, I think we've definitely had some really good episodes. I think we've had some mediocre or even bad episodes here or then. But by the nature of this show being topical, we live and die by the topics every single week. There's been many times where we choose a topic where we think it's going to be an amazing topic, and it goes on for 7, 8, 9 minutes, and we have to kind of strain to try and get it to 15. For example, in this very episode, when I picked the dead body one, I was like, oh, we could probably laugh about that for 15 minutes. And, I glance up at the clock and it's like, oh, we're 9 minutes in, when I edit that down, it'll probably be 8. It winds up being the thing where you live and die by the topics on this sort of show. Mm-hmm. So there will be times I look back and, I laugh and I like certain things. But ultimately, if I look at the whole thing, if it was purely up to me, it wouldn't be ending where it was ending, and it would go on for a while yet. And hopefully there would have been time to mix in all these things, try out different groups and panels, and see who works. Let me watch a show where I'm not hosting. Like, I would have loved that, to see one of you guys host the show instead for a week, when I was away to TIFF or something like that. But it just, for me currently, and hopefully in a year's time, I reflect on it differently. It's a very like bitter pill right now for me. Mm-hmm. So,
and I'm very much the same way, just in terms of, I'm one that never really deals well with what if scenarios. Generally, I come across as relatively optimistic, and if you can't laugh, it's just well to die type of thing. But, I do have, when I lie awake in bed at night wondering, geez, what if? I don't like these kinds of questions. I'm one that likes a strong resolution. I don't like ambiguous or nonsensical endings. So, very much like yourself, I wasn't exactly pleased to hear that the show was going to end a bit early, but obviously I'm only one party in a party of four. With regard to how I'll look back on the show in a year's time, I hope that there's a point in this show somewhere between the sheets of the drama that has occurred since day one, because there have been multiple things that have cropped up along the way. I hope there's a point where we genuinely found our niche, and I'll be able to tell it. I mean, all you guys will be able to tell it as well when you look at it, where, oh yeah, they've got that cohesion. They've got that vibe going now. I feel like there has to be an episode somewhere where we just sort of got whatever we had, and then however long that lasted, so be it. But in terms of specific events that'll stand out to me, I'll never forget how we all felt after episode 1 or 2, where we just never recorded at all.
Oh yeah,
and we were gutted as a table.
That was episode 1
because it was so crucial that we meet that deadline, and it was just an absolute nightmare trying to get that together. But for me personally, aside from like that one little instance that's kind of funny now, I'll always sort of look back on it as we stopped buying the group lotto tickets. One of the main reasons I'm still in group lotteries from workplaces I don't even work anymore is because I can't stand the idea of, my God, if they win and I was left out, I'll never get over it. So it's kind of, I sort of look at it that way. And, that can be maybe slightly too optimistic, but I started this because I thought it actually had a chance of being really good and could have grown into something. So for me, we stopped buying the group lotto ticket, and we could have won the 649. That's just my personal opinion, but yeah, not to bring everything too down, but I don't really see any way to end aside from a sad note.
Can I bring up something though? Like,
sure, go ahead.
If like we never did this, we wouldn't have found out that like Grace is like low key funny as fuck sometimes.
Can be, yeah.
Just like the timing of like some of your comments are perfect.
You don't drive.
I'm just sassy.
Yeah, I think some of us knew that. Like, I knew Grace could be snarky. Like,
I know I'm hilarious. I mean,
I don't know. I haven't seen Grace like say like anything like mean spirited ever, and I think that this is a good place to bring that.
Yeah, sometimes she's a bit biting. That's for sure. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, the whole thing isn't negative, but you're just talking about a general view of it. Any project that I want to do, I want to see it to completion. Now that the fact that it's a podcast and it's a weekly thing, would have completion been 30 episodes, 50 episodes, 200 episodes? I don't know, because it is by its very nature something that go on forever. But I just like seeing things completed, and when things end a little bit sooner than I expected, and we kind of have to be like, well, we got 2 weeks left. Let's scramble and try and pick 2 topics that are good. It just happened a lot quicker than I expected.
Yeah.
That's all.
And to bring that up, the whole reason we're ending this a bit early is kind of on me, unfortunately. I wanted to cut this a bit early because me and him are trying to move out, and
yeah, we've been living together for like 10 years.
Yeah, so like it's kind of like closing that chapter, and like in a way it kind of closed this for me a little bit, and like I wasn't necessarily like maybe this should end forever, but like where we're to now, I think it's that might be the case.
Yeah, well, what happened is when Ham told me a couple weeks ago, like after one of the recordings, it was actually one of the episodes I think we all felt really positive about.
No, it was a good episode.
Like
as it so often is.
Yeah, we all felt really good about it, and I think it actually did poorly, but whatever. That's what happens. The episodes we really like are the ones that don't perform, and the ones that I'm kind of like, that was mediocre, do well. So there's no way to play with this. It's just some episodes do better than others, but he told me that he wanted to be finished within 2 to 3 weeks' time. And Grace and Josh and I, we did have a conversation about keeping the show going with the three of us, because the plan sort of was, cursory up in the air, that we'd at least give it until the end of summer. So that would be like episode 28, because at that point in time, I'd be going to TIFF. The way it wraps out, it would have been 3 recording sessions in a row that I would have missed. And quite frankly, you guys can't do the editing like I do every week.
No,
so
there's no way.
It would have been a bit tough to record 3 extra episodes apart from all
not
of our
impossible.
Not impossible. It would have been tough. So with Grace going and doing her master's, and with me going to TIFF, and Josh going back to school, full time September, pivoting a bit, it made sense. Maybe things end the end of August. So when it happened a little bit sooner, I don't think really any of us were expecting it to end so soon. But we did have the conversation about going with the 3 of us, and it's just kind of like too big of a shakeup, I think, for 6 episodes. I know Josh felt differently about it. He thinks that we should have did 6 more episodes, just the 3 of us.
Yep.
It was just, for myself, I think it's just too much of a shakeup. We would have had to add a 4th camera to give us each our own camera. We would have had to squeeze the table. There was certain things. Ham is taking a lot of the audio recording equipment. There were certain aspects to it that it was a bit of a hurdle for just 6 more episodes, when I'm not even sure if the show would be improved. And that is the big what if question. It's like, honestly, I don't know if the show is improved or not with cutting Ham out or trimming it to 40 minutes, or, there's certain aspects that I don't know. We talked about replacing Ham, with different people that we know, but there's nobody that we knew that actually wanted to be involved full time in the show. I don't think, like a weekly recurring person. And then that puts the onus on us to.
And don't get me wrong, it is a very large commitment, and we do understand. Like, I do understand that anyone who wants out, man, you got to pull the ripcord. You got to do what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's just, it knowing that something's coming doesn't make it any easier necessarily to hear, right?
No, not at all. And like I said, it became like a production nightmare of like rebooting everything 6 episodes left. That for me, it was like, I don't know if it would have been a better show or not. If it was truly like the show would be way better, and these last 6 episodes could be like a season 2 or a rebooting or something like that, I would have felt more confidently about it. But I was just worried that we'd go on to episode 23 with 3 of us, and it'd be a shittier show for it, or be a half-hour show for it, and then just peter out even more. Because, don't get me wrong, like I see views, I see all that, but that was never a factor in terms of the show ending, I don't think, in terms of being like, well, the first episode got 500 views and episode 20 got 50. I don't think that came up in terms of ending the show for that reason.
No.
So definitely wasn't that.
But I don't know if any of us want to say our piece anymore in terms of Josh's topic. If not, I'll go right to wrapping it up. It's a bit sad. It's, a shorter episode for our last one, but I guess I'll.
Well, I'd like to say a couple of shout outs just before we sort of go off to you.
Yeah.
And some of this is probably going to be somewhat repetitive, but I don't know what he has written. I only know what I have wrote, which is, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone out there that's been watching from day one, including the viewers and the patrons. You guys are great. It was an amazing feeling, that very first episode. We had a ridiculous outcry of responses from people on that. I mean, even someone from CBC reached out to get a hold of us. Like, it was truly unanticipated. So,
oh, yeah, for sure.
And, there have been, like he said, sure, there's been some dwindling of viewership, but we've remained constant in a large segment of people that I didn't really anticipate would be watching all the time. Some of whom include, and I'm just going to shout them out here now because I know she's waiting for it, Jennifer Mayo and Bradley Douglas up there in Labrador City, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're watching all the time. And these are people that, sure, yeah, close friends. And it's just nice to know that they genuinely enjoy watching me. God knows they sees enough of me over a dozen beer and a barbecue.
Yeah.
But, to know that they also want to watch every single week to see like, oh, geez, what's he doing out there in town, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a good feeling to know that people actually give a fuck about what you're doing and think that it's entertaining enough. Mm-hmm. Because let's be real, it's an hour. Most people tune out after 10 minutes, man, for most things. So there are people out there, I'm sure, that maybe click on it, watch it for a few minutes and then jump out. But I know that they watch from start to finish. And the same thing with family out there. Like, you guys are great. It's been a laugh. And we'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, and I just want to pretty much thank the same people that Josh thanked. Like I'll start off with family and friends. My mom, my dad, who I never figured would ever tune into something like this, tunes in a little bit. Carvey would message me every single week asking for the topics ahead of time. Sometimes I'd give it to him, sometimes I wouldn't. My sister, working as an RCMP officer, finding the time to listen. But mostly I want to thank is my brother and his girlfriend, Catherine. They would kind of make it almost like an event every single week. And it started off with them giving me like notes on how to improve things or edits or kind of fine tune things. And eventually it just wound up just being like, well, we like the show and this is what we liked and here's our answers and stuff. So it wound up they actually found to be like fans themselves, obviously. Secondly, I got to thank all of you guys because obviously I couldn't have done this without you guys. I think I was kind of the glue in terms of the friends of all you guys. You don't really hang out by yourself, so I kind of pulled you all together. So obviously I couldn't have done this without you guys. So got to thank all three of you guys for doing this. And last that I have to thank is obviously the fans. Josh already mentioned our patrons, but the fact that we got any patrons at all with no goals, you got nothing for it. I was hoping we would have stickers or a card or something to give, but we just never really got to that point. But the fact that people felt strongly enough about the show to give us money every month really helped encourage it. And, we didn't take any money for July, just to be clear, because we knew a couple weeks ahead that the show was going to wrap up in July. So I want to thank those. And yeah, basically what Josh is saying, I want to thank anyone who's liked, commented, subscribed, anyone who's ever shared the video, Mosifer in particular.
Oh my God,
sharing
Mo,
every single week.
So
like I said, there's been members of the table here that forget to share. He's never forgotten since like episode 5 or 6. So, and if you're just tuning into this episode, I thank you for watching. It was just a morbid curiosity to see like, well, this failed. Let's see what happened. I thank
morbid, you. How would they bury a dead body?
Yeah, or that. I thank you for watching. And of course, I thank anyone who's been there since the beginning. So with that, I don't know if anybody else has anything to say, but
I want to say thank you to you, Colton. You were this podcast. You were the one who put in all of the work, all of the hours, all of the figuring.
Yeah.
That was all you. And we all know that it's all you. So, I said I'd stick around as long as you wanted to do it because I support you in everything you do. So I just want to say thank you to you for all of the hard work you've put in.
Yeah.
And to, I didn't have nearly as many people tuning in to listen to me as you guys did. But my friend Luke, who would always listen on his drives across the island.
Yeah.
My friend Deb, who would listen on her way to work every day. And my friend Andrea, who found time to listen all the time. So those are the people who I wanted to give a little shout out to in addition to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely got to thank you, obviously. In terms of people to watch, most of my family doesn't watch. My dad watches sometimes, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly it's random guys that I haven't seen in a long while. Mark Rousel. Mo is like...
Even Stephen Green, man. All the way out there in Alberta.
Oh yeah, Stephen Green is in Alberta. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen, who I didn't think would watch, Steve McLean.
Oh yeah.
Who else? All the guys at the gas station that talk shit about me.
The ones who you're going to pin the dead body on?
Yeah.
You need ammunition.
No, my coworkers.
I mean, if they saw the unedited footage from you, I think they might talk shit even more, my son.
But no, that's
it.
That's it. That's all I'm gonna thank because I'm sure I'm gonna forget everyone anyway. I'm gonna forget someone, so we'll cut it off there.
But with that, we're your last podcast. There's no point to tune in next week or any other week, but this was our last episode, and I'd like to thank anybody who's been there since the beginning all the way until our last. So thank you for watching. I was Colton.
I'm still Josh.
Yeah.
I'm Grace.
I'm Ham.
And thanks for watching.
Thank you.
See you later.
Love you. Bye.